This investigation is sponsored by Noom. Nikola Tesla, one of the most prolific inventors and thinkers of the 20th century, was nothing short of a mad genius. Today we'll learn of his 3-digit code to unlocking the universe, his possible communications with extraterrestrials, his harnessing of ancient Hindu metaphysics, and his late-life romance with a pigeon. And of course, all throughout we'll weave through the wild and dangerous conspiracy theories surrounding two of his secret lost inventions, that of free energy generation and the death ray. If you've got any electronic device plugged into a wall socket, you can thank Tesla's innovation of AC electrical currents for the way we live our digital lives. His ideas were far ahead of their time. But there's a darker story here. Was Nikola Tesla a man consumed by his own mind? Or was he the target of a far larger conspiracy to silence his most revolutionary inventions? Hey fellow seekers, welcome. I'm Mr. Mythos. If you're a fan of strange and ancient mysteries with research so deep you're guaranteed to fall down the rabbit hole, you're in the right place. I humbly ask that you give this video a like and ding the notifications bell so you don't miss any of the rare info we'll be digging into every video. But before we get into it, some of you know I recently tried to make a video a week, and not only was I doomed to fail, but I ended up in a pretty unhealthy lifestyle, especially with the food I ate. Worse than gaining weight, which I did, I felt so stressed and tired every day. Nikola Tesla once said, quote, "To free ourselves from animal instincts and appetites, which keep us down, we should begin at the very root from which we spring. We should effect a radical reform in the character of the food." End quote. Today's sponsor, Noom, not only embraces Tesla's idea of rethinking food, but it's the very service I've been personally using to get back on track. And I can tell you, I easily feel 10 times more alive than I did a month ago. Now, let me explain. Noom isn't a diet. It's a health platform that leverages psychology, science, and community. You work directly with a real coach trained in cognitive behavioral therapy, and you're also part of a support group with others on the same journey. But what's most profound is how Noom makes you rethink food. Every day you're given a few short lessons as part of a long-term psychology-based curriculum, and my favorite so far is called Unprocess Your Diet, which is about retraining your taste buds to actually prefer healthier food. Finally, Noom has intuitive tools to track exercise, water, and calories, and yes, you can scan barcodes and add custom recipes. I've been using them every day and it's super easy. To take your free Noom evaluation, click on my link below or go to noom.com/mythos and they'll design a custom program specifically for your needs and goals. Thanks again to Noom. Let's dive right into the mysteries of one of the greatest minds to ever live, Nikola Tesla. Nikola Tesla was a Serbian-American inventor and futurist who lived from 1856 to 1943. He was born in the small village of Smijan in what was then Yugoslavia, and today the country of Croatia. Tesla's father was an Eastern Orthodox priest, but he perhaps took more from his mother, a remarkably inventive woman who designed and engineered her own tools and mechanical appliances, despite having never been educated. She also had a profound ability to memorize epic Serbian poems after reading them only a few times. Tesla would later credit his mother, Georgina, for his photographic memory and engineering creativity. There's little doubt that this woman was a prodigy, but having been denied her full intellectual potential due to her gender, her legacy would be carried on by her son, Nikola. In high school, young Nikola Tesla would first discover the wonders of electricity in his physics class, and he called it a mysterious phenomena and a wonderful force. Electricity would eventually grow into his primary passion and obsession. He felt a special connection to its inner workings, which would manifest visually in his mind's eye, as if he already knew this particular science from birth. And this led to many instances where his teacher accused him of cheating, but could never prove it. It was in these teenage years that Tesla began to recognize that he had a special power that others did not. Earlier in his childhood, he'd suffered from blinding flashes of light which occurred randomly, accompanied by striking visions of words, ideas, and even memories. As a child, he had no control, and eventually this led to numerous out-of-body experiences where he would be teleported to what he later described as, quote, new places, cities, and countries, as dear to me as those in actual life and not a bit less intense in their manifestations, end quote. But as he got older, Tesla finally harnessed this power to the point at which he could visualize almost anything he wanted in immense and realistic detail. Decades later, as a full-time inventor, he called this technique picture thinking, where he mentally pieced together every detail, dimension, and mechanism with extreme precision, and finally constructed the device in real life, almost entirely from memory. Soon after graduating high school, though, the young Tesla underwent a serious ordeal that would change his life forever. He contracted cholera, a severe bacterial illness from drinking contaminated water, and this left him bedridden for over 9 months, nearly killing him several times during that period. He was only 17 years old. This experience left him with a lifelong germophobia, but some speculate that the horrid illness might have affected his brain further, leading to a life and career constantly tittering between prodigy and madness. See, there was a darker side to Nikola Tesla's exceptional capabilities. In his years after moving to the United States and transitioning into adulthood, he began to obsess over certain things, writing in various journals that, quote, I would get a fever by looking at a peach. I had a violent aversion to the earrings of women. The sight of a pearl would almost give me a fit, but I was fascinated with the glitter of crystals or objects with sharp edges. When I drop little squares of paper in a dish filled with liquid, I always sense a peculiar and awful taste in my mouth. I would not touch the hair of other people except, perhaps, at the point of a revolver. End quote. Most psychiatric professionals today agree that Tesla was displaying serious symptoms of obsessive-compulsive disorder. At his most extreme point, he became obsessed with a specific white pigeon who he genuinely believed was communicating with him. However, this may have been more of a reflection of the truly eccentric person he was. Let me explain. While living in New York, Tesla would regularly spend hours in Central Park feeding the pigeons there, and if he saw any pigeons that were injured, he'd take them home and nurse them by hand back to health. In the hotel room that he lived in, the inventor kept the windows open so his feathered friends could visit freely, and he would request the hotel chef to prepare special birdseed mixes, just for them. Though Tesla never married or even dated, believing that his chastity helped him focus on his inventions, he would admit to falling in love with a special white pigeon who visited him almost every day and, according to the inventor, communicated with him telepathically. Reflecting on this relationship, he wrote, quote, I've been feeding pigeons, thousands of them for years, but there was one, a beautiful bird, pure white with light gray tips on its wings. That one was different. It was a female. I had only to wish and call her, and she would come flying to me. I loved that pigeon as a man loves a woman, and she loved me. As long as I had her, there was purpose to my life. End quote. In 1922, the pigeon flew through his window to let him know that she was dying, and as she passed away just minutes later, Tesla saw a white light in her eyes, brighter than any electrical current he had ever seen. He was absolutely heartbroken and, for a long while, felt like he could not go on. In this way, Tesla was truly an unconventional character, and this was obvious in his obsessions and passions, but also his emotions. The inventor was known for constantly bouncing between mania and depression. During the highs, he would rarely sleep and claimed to only need 2 hours of sleep a night. And in the lows, his insecurities ate away at him, and he would literally lock himself away from the world, sometimes for weeks on end. One of Tesla's biographers, Bernie Carlson, wrote, quote, there were moments where he would be the toast of the town, and moments where he seemed to want to sit in a dark hotel room and be by himself." End quote. At the age of 86, Nikola Tesla would die alone in room 3327 of the New Yorker Hotel, but he would leave a profound legacy in our world. Today he's recognized as the inventor of AC power current, hydroelectric power, the radio, remote-controlled vehicles, induction motors, and wireless energy transfer. However, with this lonely death in 1943, a striking number of his most valuable and confidential papers were reported missing, and to this day they've never been found, and it's not exactly sure what they contained. Tesla was famous for his secrecy when it came to his work, and it's believed that there were a number of lost inventions that never saw the light of day, or perhaps were intentionally suppressed. In fact, there are legitimate reasons to believe Nikola Tesla invented something that would have single-handedly destroyed one of the largest and most profitable economic sectors to exist, and one that still dominates the world today. I'm speaking of energy generation. As reported by the New York American newspaper on November 1st, 1933, quote, "Nikola Tesla, the celebrated physicist, recognized in the scientific world as the foremost living inventor, announces that, at a date not distant, a new source of power will be available everywhere, displacing coal, oil, gas, and other established fuels of industry. The result of 30 years of search and experimentation into and with the mysterious force, which, for want of a more precise terminology, is called cosmic energy." End quote. The cosmic energy spoken of by the New York American was a term taken from Tesla himself, and it remains a highly mysterious and esoteric concept, and we'll be investigating it in detail as to what exactly he meant by it. Regardless, this cosmic energy was the key to his invention of a free energy generator. In 1933, Tesla provided a utopian description of this energy reservoir. Quote, "This new power for the driving of the world's machinery will be derived from the energy which operates the universe, the cosmic energy, which is everywhere, present in unlimited quantities." End quote. Imagine never paying another power bill in your life. Imagine never needing to worry about fluctuating gas prices or even stopping at a gas station ever again. Clearly, this cosmic energy was a substance with the potential to radically alter our world as we know it. However, even to this day, researchers still speculate on what exactly Tesla was talking about. And just a heads up before we move on, we're going to get a bit scientific in this video, and I'll try to keep it in simple terms. So stick with me here, as I guarantee you'll learn some pretty incredible facts about energy and its unlikely connection to esotericism, extraterrestrials, even ancient religion. It may also make you question the world as we know it. Is it possible that we've been deliberately lied to by our political and industrial leaders for nearly a century, or perhaps far, far longer? First, we need to understand what free energy is. Genuinely free energy must be both zero cost and pollution free. Today, free energy is considered by many to be purely in the realm of science fiction. This is because, according to the known laws of physics, it's impossible for energy to be infinite, and no machine can create energy from nothing. Creating energy from nothing violates the law of mass energy conservation, which states that neither mass nor energy can be created or destroyed. However, energy can convert into mass, and the opposite is true as well. Mass can convert into energy. For example, food is measured in calories, and calories are a unit of energy. This is because the mass of the food you eat is metabolized and then released from your body as heat, which is a form of energy. The atomic bomb follows the same principle. By splitting the mass of an atom, energy is released. So, just remember that energy cannot be created from nothing, according to the known laws of physics. And to explain why energy can't be infinite, even though energy is never actually destroyed, it does change from one form to another, which is the law of conservation of energy. For example, a water wheel generator uses the kinetic or gravitational energy of water falling, and converts it into electrical energy, which we can then use to power a heater, which turns the electrical energy into heat energy. Now, the scientific-minded of you might be thinking, if energy is never destroyed but simply converted, why can't we just continuously convert energy in a loop? Well, that would violate the second law of thermodynamics, which basically says that there will always be some inefficiency. So, as energy converts from one form to another, more and more of it gets wasted and, while it still technically exists, the energy is unusable. For example, a light bulb's useful energy is the light it produces. However, much of the electrical energy flowing into the light bulb is wasted in the form of thermal energy, or heat. That's why many electronics claim to be energy efficient, because they minimize the energy wasted. But some amount of energy will always be wasted no matter what, and even the most efficient conversion will never be perfect. So just remember that, according to the known laws of physics, no pool of energy can ever be infinite, despite Tesla's strange claim of the unlimited quantities of cosmic energy. So, on a very technical standpoint, free energy is simply impossible, and if that's not the case, either the science is fundamentally flawed or there would have to be some massive conspiracy involving almost all the world's engineers and physicists in cahoots, who all agree that it's impossible. However, if we were to rethink free energy as not truly free, but rather an incredibly efficient conversion of usable energy from some massive existing energy reservoir, now we're back in the realm of possibility. Basically, if the supply is large enough and the conversion is efficient enough, we can pretty much consider the energy to be free. The sun, for example, is a power source that will provide continuous energy for the next 5 billion years. So, why can't we just power everything with solar? Well, the problem is our current technology is not very good at harnessing it. We can generate energy from solar in small amounts, but nowhere near enough to meet the energy demands of the modern world. On the other hand, fossil fuels are far more efficient at converting to electrical energy. In fact, fossil fuels seem to beat every renewable energy we know of by a shockingly large margin. And this is exactly why the oil industry is so incredibly profitable. It can't be challenged, at least until the world runs out of oil or Earth comes to some apocalyptic end due to the detrimental effects on the environment. However, how true is it that our oil mega conglomerates and other fossil fuel giants can't be challenged? What if someone did manage to harness a renewable energy in an incredibly efficient way? The invention of free or ultra-low-cost energy generation would effectively destroy their business model in one fell swoop. There's a clear motive to prevent this from happening. The economic powers that be are ruthless, and any threat to their stability and dominance would obviously be attacked with full force. Nikola Tesla understood this, once writing in his journal that, quote, "No free energy device will ever be allowed to reach the market," end quote. And the way he learned this lesson began with one of the most devastating failures of his career. Beginning in 1901, Tesla undertook the grand and expensive construction of a wireless transmission station known as the Wardenclyffe Tower, which at first was used for transmitting messages, but he soon shifted its primary purpose to the generation and transmission of cosmic energy. This project would be his first serious opportunity to turn the dream he had had for the last 10 years into a reality. See, in 1891, in a speech before the American Institute of Electrical Engineers, Tesla first revealed his belief that the universe held some massive pool of energy that could be harnessed at any location on Earth. Quote, "Ere many generations pass, our machinery will be driven by a power obtainable at any point in the universe." This idea is not novel. We find it in the delightful myth of Antaeus, who derives power from the Earth. It is a mere question of time when men will succeed in attaching their machinery to the very wheelwork of nature. End quote. In that speech, Tesla referenced Antaeus, the giant son of Gaia, the earth goddess, and Poseidon, the sea god. Because of his relation to his mother, Antaeus drew massive strength from the earth, as long as he was in physical contact with it. However, he ended up being defeated by Hercules, who lifted him up from the ground and away from his source of power, then crushed him to death. And this remains one of the most famous stories in Greek mythology. However, this may have been a bit of a premonition, because Tesla's Wardenclyffe Tower project would be killed too, as soon as its source of power was cut. Not long after the inventor announced that he was shifting the focus of the tower toward the harnessing and wireless transmission of cosmic energy, the project's primary backer, the banking magnate JP Morgan, pulled out completely. Other financial backers followed as well, and Tesla couldn't find any other investors to replace him, despite much of the tower already having been built. Thus, he was forced to abandon this grand project in 1906 without ever seeing it become operational. And in 1917, the remains of Wardenclyffe Tower were demolished and turned into scrap in order to pay off Tesla's debts. Besides destroying the inventor financially, this failure crushed his self-esteem and would haunt him for the rest of his life. Looking back, it is rather shocking and curious that so many of his esteemed financiers pulled the plug on this project specifically. This was many years before he announced his free energy generation machine, but the potential of the Wardenclyffe Tower may have still been seen as a threat to the major players of the energy sector. As an inventor of very expensive experimental devices, Tesla relied entirely on the backing of powerful financiers, many of whom were deeply invested in the energy sector. Notably, JP Morgan, the primary backer of the Wardenclyffe Tower, as well as the one who effectively ended the project, was a central figure of General Electric, today a $100 billion business and one of the largest corporations in the world. Free energy suppression has been a popular conspiracy theory since at least the 1920s, when the American inventor Thomas Henry More claimed to have discovered a source of energy floating throughout our atmosphere, and he developed a machine to harness it with extreme efficiency and then convert it to a cold form of electricity. In the early 1930s, this machine of his was witnessed working by dozens of people, who confirmed that it functioned without any exterior input of energy. However, this success did not last long. First, More claimed that he had received several serious threats to stop his public demonstrations. Not long after, his machine began to break down and fail repeatedly. He eventually discovered that his assistant had tampered with it and had him fired. After this, the harassment and threats began to target his wife and children, and More himself was reportedly shot at multiple times in public, which scared him so badly that he bulletproofed the family car. And finally, his laboratory was broken into and robbed. More would never recover from these equipment losses, which were worth around $2 million today. He would never be able to rebuild his machine, and he abandoned his research into energy generation completely. More's story may have been one of the first, but harassing, tampering, and suppression of research remains a common theme in many reported discoveries of new forms of energy. Free energy devices that are speculated to have been suppressed include torus-based generators, cold fusion generators, anti-gravity propulsion systems, and reverse-engineered extraterrestrial technology. The conspiracy theory asserts that certain tactics are used by these corporations to keep such technology from reaching the market. It's thought that these companies donate millions of dollars to governments so that the law is in their favor, and donate millions to research institutions in order to control research into alternative energy generation. Beyond that, they're believed to buy out specific patents, sue inventors into bankruptcy, or, in some drastic cases, even turn to murder. And inventors who have seemingly become victims for their research into free energy include Stanley Meyer, John Kanzias, and Eugene Malov. In fact, Malov was murdered in 2004 by 3 men with no confirmed motive. Another among these alleged victims of free energy suppression is Nikola Tesla. Tesla was known for being mysterious with his research and inventions, and perhaps for good reason. Many of his ideas were stolen during his time working for the Continental Edison Company, and also directly under Thomas Edison, who shamelessly took credit for many of Tesla's own breakthroughs, for example, his redesign of the DC dynamos generator. However, despite his reputation for secrecy, he was particularly tight-lipped with his free energy breakthrough. Not only had he learned a hard lesson with the Wardenclyffe Tower, but by now he knew of the industrial disruption that such an invention would cause. Speaking about his free energy generator, he declared, quote, "I shall not announce the scientific principles of the discovery and describe the mechanical means I have devised for carrying it out. It is sufficient at this time to say that I have performed experiments and obtained results from which I am able to calculate what the mechanism may be expected to perform. Much, of course, remains to be accomplished, but it is work not necessarily of a creative kind. It can be done by many, and hence development to the point of actual operation may be enormously speeded up." End quote. From this statement, it's clear that Tesla had already figured out the core mechanisms and was in a phase of fine-tuning and finalizing its design. So this makes it all the more strange that, to this day, we still have very little solid information as to what this device actually was. With the announcement of his free energy invention in 1934, Tesla lost his final backers, and by the end of his life, he was literally dying of poverty. This was the final result of a vicious trend that seemed to follow Tesla whenever he announced progress on a technology that threatened the energy status quo. Free energy suppression comes in many forms, but in the case of Tesla, a scientific genius with a weakness for managing his money, all that seemed to be necessary was pulling away the financing, and the rest is history. But the mystery goes far deeper than this strange device lost to time. What about that ethereal material he claimed was the source of his power, that is, the cosmic energy, whose reservoir was apparently on a near infinite scale? Even today, Tesla's descriptions of cosmic energy have never been matched to anything in known existence. In 1932, the inventor stated, quote, "I have harnessed the cosmic rays and caused them to operate a motive device. The attractive features of the cosmic rays is their constancy. They shower down on us throughout the whole 24 hours. It will not require devices for storing energy, as would be necessary with devices using wind, tide, or sunlight. They move with great velocity, exceeding that of light." End quote. Beyond this statement, which makes it clear that cosmic energy is far more powerful than wind, water, and solar energy, he revealed a number of other key details about it in various interviews and publications. For example, cosmic energy is made up of particles that are incredibly microscopic, so small that they can hardly be observed. These particles can also penetrate through almost any substance without any observable effect. Cosmic energy also arrives on Earth from all directions, at all times. As for its origin, it comes from stars, and this includes our own sun. Finally, Tesla hinted many times that cosmic energy was somehow interlinked with radioactivity. You might think this describes solar power, but as we already learned, cosmic energy is available 24 hours a day and moves faster than the speed of light. Tesla himself clarified, quote, "Night will not interrupt the flow of the new power supply. The disappearance of the sun below the horizon will not shut it off." End quote. So, if it wasn't solar, what exactly was it? We'll explore another related conspiracy, that of Tesla's death ray weapon at the end. But in order to uncover what this mysterious energy source was, we need to understand it from the mind of Nikola Tesla himself. And that requires a deep dive into his metaphysical understanding of the world. Nikola Tesla had a special power, that of his visions, which he learned to harness as an adult. These first began when he was a child and were sparked by one specific traumatic event in 1863, the death of his older brother, Dane Tesla. Dane, only 12 years old, was riding on a horse when Nikola accidentally spooked it. The horse bolted and bucked, finally throwing Dane off and trampling him, killing him under its hooves. Nikola was not only responsible for the incident, but he witnessed the entire thing. He was only 6 years old. After the death of Dane, something changed dramatically for the young Nikola. He began to experience intense visions, and in his waking life he perceived energies, frequencies, and vibrations in all colors and forms, floating in the air around him, which he described as, quote, filled with tongues of living flame, end quote. He even believed he could touch them because they looked so real to him, despite no other person being able to see it. Though for many years as a child, he was overwhelmed and tormented by the visions, he would eventually master this power, learning to control them and harness their potential. But with this came a profound shift in his understanding of the connection between the mind, body, and universe. Tesla once wrote, quote, "To me, the universe is simply a great machine which never came into being and never will end. The human being is no exception to the natural order. Man, like the universe, is a machine." End quote. He noted that whatever his body could do, it would be possible to make a mechanical contraption do the same thing, because in the end, everything is a machine, meaning everything works similarly on a fundamental level. For example, he eventually concluded that these visions were the result of a reflex action of his brain and retinas, and that if his eyes could produce the visions, quote, "it should be possible to project on a screen the image of any object one conceives and make it visible." End quote. The reason why Tesla emphasized a fundamental connection between the mental plane, the physical body, and the universe at large was his realization that everything, yes, everything, is made up of frequencies and vibrations. Today, this universal truth has been proven as a scientific fact that all matter, including you and me, are constantly in a wave-like motion, either vibrating, oscillating, or resonating. But Tesla was one of the first to propose this idea, at least in the scientific world. Famously, he wrote, quote, "If you want to find the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration." End quote. He also observed that our energies, frequencies, and vibrations are shared between living beings as well as inanimate objects, such as the planets and stars, and they affect each other, sometimes with enormous impact. He called this effect the cosmic pain. In an interview from 1899, found in the American magazine Immortality, Tesla gave a detailed description of his esoteric concept of the cosmic pain. Quote, "Whenever one of my near and dear people were hurt, I felt physical pain. This is because our bodies are made from a similar material, and our souls are related with unbreakable wires. The incomprehensible sadness that sometimes overwhelmed us means that somewhere on the other side of this planet, a child or generous man died. In some periods, the entire universe is tired of itself and of us. Disappearance of a star and the appearance of comets will affect us more than we can imagine. We must learn this truth in order to be healed." End quote. We might also relate to some of the private writings of Tesla, as they show how deeply he believed and understood this universal connection on multiple levels. Quote, "These ties cannot be seen, but we can feel them. I cut myself in the finger and it pains me. This finger is a part of me. I see a friend hurt, and it hurts me too. My friend and I are one." Does this not prove that each of us is only part of a whole? For ages, this idea has been proclaimed in the consummately wise teachings of religion, probably not alone as a means of ensuring peace and harmony among men, but as a deeply founded truth. The Buddhist expresses it in one way, the Christian in another, but both say the same: we are all one. Science, too, recognizes this connectedness of separate individuals. Every living being is an engine geared to the wheelwork of the universe. Though seemingly affected only by its immediate surrounding, the sphere of external influence extends to infinite distance. End quote. It may come as a surprise, or not, that one of the greatest minds in science was also an incredibly spiritual man. It's true that Tesla was born into a highly religious family, and both his father and grandfather were Eastern Orthodox priests. In fact, his dad wanted him to become a priest, up until the cholera incident where he made a promise to the teenage Nikola that if he survived his fight with cholera, he could leave home to study engineering at a university. It's pretty wild how quickly a person's fate can change like that. But back to Tesla's spiritual understanding, many people wondered whether he was religious. He was asked about this many times in interviews, to which he answered, quote, "In my heart, I am deeply religious, though not in the orthodox sense of that word. What one man calls God, another calls the laws of physics." End quote. Nikola Tesla did believe that there was a God, at least in the sense that there was something in the universe that was both unknowable and all-knowing, of infinite energy and potential, and of ultimate influence on the universe and its inhabitants. These sorts of beliefs on God reflect the classical beliefs of any major monotheistic religion, Christianity, Islam, and Sikhism, for example. However, with the exception of any moral element, there was no good or bad associated with Tesla's God. It was simply what it was, and the reason why everything is the way it is. But not so different from a prophet like Muhammad or Abraham, the inventor claimed to have received messages from this entity by way of the cosmic pain. Quote, "My brain is only a receiver. In the universe there is a core from which we obtain knowledge, strength, and inspiration. I have not penetrated into the secrets of this core, but I know that it exists." End quote. Some who've studied the spiritualism of the inventor have claimed that, by his description, he was accessing what is known in some esoteric schools as the Akashic Records. Existing in some ethereal plane of existence, the Akashic Records can be explained as the ultimate collection of every event, thought, word, emotion, and intent to have ever occurred in the past, present, or future, and this encompasses the entire universe and all forms of life to ever exist. Someday I'll investigate the Akashic Records in depth, and actually I did already cover another person who supposedly accessed them, an American clairvoyant named Edgar Cayce, and that video is called The Sleeping Prophet of Atlantis, in case you want to check it out. But for now, just know that Tesla did believe that he received knowledge and information, on top of visions, from something that oddly resembles this occult concept. He would write, quote, "I am part of a light, and it is the music. The light fills my 6 senses. I see it, hear, feel, smell, touch, and think. I saw the past, present, and future, all at the same time." End quote. But how exactly did Tesla come to access even the outer edges of this infinite library? Well, famously he did give an answer. Quote, "If you only knew the magnificence of the 3, 6, and 9, then you would have the key to the universe." End quote. It's well documented that Tesla absolutely obsessed over these 3 particular numbers, 3, 6, and 9. It began in 1917, around the time when he was exhibiting strong symptoms of obsessive-compulsive disorder, and it started with the number 3. During his daily swim at the public pool, he always swam exactly 33 laps, and if he lost count, he couldn't leave and had to start over from 0. And before entering any building, he would have an overwhelming urge to circle the surrounding city block exactly 3 times first, before going in. Tesla's work schedule also reflected these numbers. Every day he would work from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m., and after dinner and a long break, he would resume his work and finish at 3 a.m. We know that Tesla was a fan of exercising, and on top of his daily swims, he'd also take daily walks, which would be either 13 or 16 kilometers in length. In the kitchen, he would use exactly 18 napkins to wash his dishes, 18 being divisible by 9, 6, and 3. And finally, he would only ever stay in hotel rooms with a room number that could be divided by 3. For example, the room he died in was number 3327. No one is entirely sure what Tesla meant by 3, 6, and 9 being the key to the universe, as he never elaborated further. However, it's obvious by the way he lived his life that these numbers were of great importance to him. Some have speculated that the 3, 6, and 9 represent the other key to the universe recorded by Tesla, that being energy, frequency, and vibration. Regardless, the true use and meaning of these numbers remain a mystery. However, looking at these numbers from a purely mathematical perspective, we might be able to shed some answers. And pay close attention, as if you've never heard of this before, it'll probably blow your mind. What I'm about to demonstrate for you is a reoccurring pattern in nature based on the powers of 2. And because it's observed in the division of cells within living beings, some people call it the blueprint of God. First, I'll give the rules and how to calculate the pattern, and then I'll show you the math in action. So, without further ado, we begin by calculating the powers of 2. This begins with the number 1, and then every number that follows is double the number before it. Now that we have a list of the powers of 2, we need to calculate each one's digital root. The digital root is the single-digit value obtained by adding together the digits of a number. So if the number is already a single digit, that's its digital root. The digital root of 4 is 4. But if the number is made up of more than one digit, for example 32, we would add 3 plus 2 to get 5 as the digital root. As another example, if the number is 256, we would add 2 plus 5 plus 6, which equals 13, and 13 is still 2 digits, so we add 1 plus 3 to get 4. So the digital root of 256 is 4. By following this, we get a certain pattern that goes on infinitely. And for this example, there's a system called vortex mathematics that's used in this calculation, and it's called that because vortex math is performed within a circular diagram, and the repeating pattern produces a sort of vortex within it. So, let's check it out in action. We have the powers of 2 listed out here, and if we calculate the digital roots, we get 1, 2, 4, 8, 7, 5. 1, 2, 4, 8, 7, 5, and so on. The pattern just continues like that, infinitely. In fact, it even somewhat resembles the infinity symbol. Notice though that there are 3 digits missing. That is 3, 6, and 9. Some people see vortex mathematics as one of the deepest structures in the universe, something that underlies all things, a fundamental pattern that, if properly utilized, may allow for the breaking of the laws of physics, possibly even the generation of truly free energy. The potential of the vortex math system and the 3, 6, and 9 continue to be researched today, and there are very few definite answers. But if we turn to a religious perspective, it's interesting to note that 3 is a reoccurring trope. In Christianity, there's the somewhat polytheistic concept of the Trinity, God the Father, God the Son, and God the Holy Ghost, which are 3 distinct entities that make up one singular essence of God, known as the Godhead. In Hinduism, there are exactly 3 principal gods that are all-powerful: Brahma the Creator, Vishnu the Preserver, and Shiva the Destroyer. These 3 deities make up the Trimurti, a trinity that is considered to be 3 forms of a single supreme divinity known as the Para-Brahman. And in ancient Mesopotamian religion, as noted by the 19th century theologian and historian Thomas Dennis Rock, quote, "The ancient Babylonians recognized the doctrine of a trinity, or 3 persons in one god, as appears from a composite god with 3 heads forming part of their mythology." End quote. The 3 gods Rock is referring to are the deities Nimrod, Semiramis, and Tammuz. Semiramis was Nimrod's wife, and after Nimrod died, she became pregnant with Tammuz, who she announced was the reincarnation of Nimrod, and these 3 separate entities began to be worshipped as one. On a side note, completely unrelated to Tesla, I just want to point out how seriously interesting it is that the trinities of the Mesopotamian religion, Hinduism, and Christianity are pretty much the same idea, three gods as one. It's well known that Mesopotamian religion influenced Christianity, but Hinduism is completely unrelated and arguably the most ancient of the three. Other ancient religions also show a fixation on three and a trinity of gods, such as the ancient Greeks and Egyptians, the Phoenicians, and even the Celts. As the early Catholic theologian St. Jerome testified, quote, "All the ancient nations believed in the Trinity," end quote. It is also worth noting that trinities occur in nature as well, something that Tesla would have well understood. The very makeup of an atom, for example, are three basic particles: protons, neutrons, and electrons. And in the larger picture, scientists state that three astronomical bodies are necessary for life on Earth to exist. The Earth, of course, is the first, made up of 1/3 land and 2/3 water. The Sun is the second, providing us with heat, light, and energy. And the Moon is the third, holding the Earth steady through gravity, maintaining a stable climate, and regulating the rhythm of the tides. Finally, Tesla himself had his own trinity, that being energy, frequency, and vibration: 3, 6, and 9. Whatever the true meaning of the numbers was, there is no doubt that it's a profound sequence. Returning back to Nikola Tesla's harnessing of the cosmic pain, we know that he used this understanding of frequency and vibration to receive messages from the Akashic records, or what he simply called the core of the universe. In fact, this universal vibration was supposedly how he communicated with the only lover in his life, that special white pigeon that would fly through his hotel window every day. But his cosmic pain theory also inspired a series of lesser-known but controversial experiments in which he tried to find a way to communicate with the outer universe through technology. Tesla was an absolute believer in the existence of intelligent extraterrestrial life and even hyper-advanced alien civilizations, as evidenced by his own words, quote, "Most certainly, some planets are not inhabited, but others are, and among these there must exist life under all conditions and phases of development," end quote. Tesla believed that these advanced extraterrestrials had discovered the same secret to the universe as he had, that everything is energies, frequencies, and vibrations, and thus a universal method of communication could be established, one likely used by all evolved alien species and hopefully Earth too, if his experiment was successful. Through his Akashic insight, Tesla felt that he could potentially open up Earth to the larger intergalactic society. In 1899, he set up a field laboratory in Colorado Springs, equipped to record frequencies sent from other planets. And in July of that year, while tracking a lightning storm, he received a sudden series of beeps. After ruling out any other possible cause and further researching what he'd experienced, he published the following announcements, quote, "Brethren, we have a message from another world, unknown and remote. It reads 1, 2, 3. According to my investigations, it could not have originated from the Sun, the Moon, or Venus. Further study has since satisfied me that they must have emanated from Mars. The feeling is constantly growing on me that I had been the first to hear the greeting of one planet to another." End quote. Some believe that this alien message, if legitimate and not some natural phenomenon, is confirmation of Tesla's mastery of the cosmic pain. He had sent them a message or intent through his own vibration, and they had sent him a message back. It's an odd story in the already odd life of Nikola Tesla. Perhaps not as strange as the whole pigeon romance thing, but certainly worth considering in this context, especially as he had claimed to receive information from outside of this planet before. It can't be denied that Tesla saw science and the universe differently than his peers who remained in the realm of hard observable fact. He was a child haunted by powerful visions, who grew into a man whose scientific exploration was inspired by metaphysical and spiritual concepts. Likewise, his dream of free energy was largely inspired by a religious mystic and close friend of his, the profoundly influential teacher of Hinduism in the West, Swami Vivekananda. As a chief disciple of the important 19th century Hindu guru Ramakrishna, Swami Vivekananda traveled to the United States after his guru's death, tirelessly conducting hundreds of lectures on Indian philosophy and becoming one of the first and most influential Hindu teachers to introduce the wisdom and practices of Vedanta and yoga to the Western world. In 1896, it was by complete chance that both Nikola Tesla and Swami Vivekananda happened to be attending a play called Izel, which was based on the life of Buddha. After the play, the two ran into each other, and quickly a passionate conversation was sparked. As a Hindu mystic, Vivekananda was fascinated by Tesla's ideas on the mechanisms that drove the material world: energy, frequency, and vibration. This was rather early on, and Tesla was just beginning to perceive and understand these ideas himself, and he was lacking in terminology. But Vivekananda quickly related what he was describing to the teachings and scriptures of Hinduism, and this was both an important source of confirmation and inspiration to the inventor. In fact, the Swami even brought up one of the primary teachings of his former guru, Ramakrishna, that all living things were connected to a divine center, not so different from Tesla's belief in the core of the universe. This very conversation had such a profound effect on Tesla that he went on to meet with Swami Vivekananda many times and eventually began studying the Vedas, the most ancient Hindu scriptures. Throughout the rest of his career, and especially his research into cosmic energy, he would use many ancient Sanskrit terms to describe the source, existence, and physical makeup of matter itself. For example, quote, "All perceptible matter comes from a primary substance, or tenuity beyond conception, filling all space, the akasha, or luminiferous ether, which is acted upon by the life-giving prana, or creative force, calling into existence, in never-ending cycles, all things and phenomena." End quote. So, in this rather esoteric statement, Tesla refers to two major Hindu concepts, akasha and prana. According to Vedantic Hinduism, akasha is the most basic essence of all things in the material world. Akasha was also the first element created and is part of everything in existence. However, directly translated, akasha means upper sky or outer space. Also note that this is where the term Akashic Records comes from. Prana, on the other hand, is an ancient Sanskrit term denoting life force or vital air. Prana is a basic principle of life. However, it's infused with all things in reality, including inanimate objects. Interestingly, according to Vedantic Hinduism, prana is believed to come from the sun and other stars, which is exactly where Tesla's cosmic energy is said to originate. Could akasha and prana be one and the same as the cosmic energy? If so, it's ironic to say that the essence of creation and the force of life may have powered Nikola Tesla's most dangerous and infamous invention, the death ray. Fittingly, though, this final saga begins with the inventor's own death. On January 8th, 1943, on the 33rd floor of the New Yorker Hotel, room 3327, a cleaning maid named Alice Monahan ignored the Do Not Disturb sign fixed onto the door and stepped into the decrepit and messy living space of Nikola Tesla. Only a few feet in, she quickly discovered the 86-year-old inventor hunched over a chair and stripped naked, with only a pair of socks dangling from his feet. Nikola Tesla was dead, and had been for some time. The morning after, Tesla's nephew, Sava Kosanovic, arrived at the scene to investigate. He noted that his uncle's body had been removed, and it seemed that someone had gone through all of his belongings, mainly his folders containing documentation on his inventions. There were large gaps, and many technical papers and schematics were clearly missing, as was a specific black notebook that Tesla always kept on him and had previously told his nephew was of vital importance. It contained confidential notes on the work he had done for the American government, as well as key information regarding Tesla's most secret inventions and experiments. The following day, the FBI arrived and closed the room off, suspecting possible foul play, and representatives of the Office of Alien Property seized all of Tesla's remaining documents and possessions. Oddly enough, these would be analyzed by Dr. John G. Trump, the paternal uncle of the future US President, Donald Trump, whose mission was to identify any dangerous information Tesla may have left. He later reported that he found nothing of interest. However, these documents would be immediately classified as top secret and would not be seen again until 2016, over 7 decades later. According to later reports from the FBI, the American government had taken such drastic and immediate action for one main reason: a specific device Tesla was believed to have successfully created, a weapon known today as the Death Ray. The US wanted to secure all information on this device before foreign powers got to it first. This leaves us with several important questions. Was Nikola Tesla assassinated, and who stole his research? What could have motivated such actions? And finally, where are Tesla's missing papers today? To understand this conspiracy, we need to first take a close look at this superweapon of unimaginable destructive potential. It may seem shocking that Tesla would invent such a terrible device, but the reality is that his intention was pure. The inventor understood the universal truth reflected by both Hinduism and science, that we as living creatures are all inherently connected, and thus, as strange as it may sound in retrospect, the inventor was hoping to provide a lasting solution to global peace. For all his life, Nikola Tesla harbored a deep hatred of war, and this was inspired by his father, Milutin Tesla, whose own father had fought in the front lines of the Napoleonic Wars. Milutin himself was an Orthodox priest remembered for his mentorship of many Serbian soldiers. War was a grave reality in his time, and in 1852, following a series of large and violent revolutions across Europe, known as the Springtime of the Peoples, Milutin wrote the following words in a letter, quote, "For these two, the church and the people, wherever I am, I'll be ready to lay down my life." End quote. As for Nikola Tesla's own experience, the home that he was born in the Smijan village, was crushed to rubble and splinters by Croatian tanks, and Croatia itself had been battered by war. Tesla may have never experienced the horrors of war firsthand, but there's no doubt that he understood it. And for all of his professional life, he labored to invent a device that would end violent warfare entirely and forever. In a 1937 interview, Tesla described the logic behind his ultimate anti-war solution. Quote, "Progress will be impossible while nations persist in the savage practice of killing each other off. I inherited from my father, an erudite man who labored hard for peace, an ineradicable hatred of war. Like other inventors, I believed at one time that war could be stopped by making it more destructive, but I found that I was mistaken. I underestimated man's combative instinct. We cannot abolish war by outlawing it. We cannot end it by disarming the strong. War can be stopped, not by making the strong weak, but by making every nation, weak or strong, able to defend itself. Hitherto, all devices that could be used for defense could also be utilized to serve for aggression. This nullified the value of the improvement for purposes of peace. But I was fortunate enough to evolve a new idea and to perfect means which can be used chiefly for defense. If it is adopted, it will make any country, large or small, impregnable against armies, airplanes, and other means of attack. If no country can be attacked successfully, there can be no purpose in war." End quote. This idea of the ultimate defensive device was the inspiration for the most controversial and frightening of Nikola Tesla's alleged lost inventions. Just like his cosmic energy generator, Tesla's death ray is steeped in conspiracy and speculative lore. It was yet another invention that he teased for decades up until his untimely passing. He called this weapon the Teleforce, and at first, for its anti-war purpose, the media dubbed it the Peace Ray. However, these names quickly died out in favor of the iconic and foreboding term we know it by today. So, what exactly is a death ray? Well, a death ray is a theoretical directed energy weapon that attacks or obliterates its target using highly focused energy. For example, lasers, charged particles, or even ultrasonic acoustics. But in Tesla's case, he stated that its power source was the very same as his free energy generator, the mysterious cosmic energy reservoir that surrounded the Earth in immense quantities. Similar to his free energy generator, Nikola Tesla wouldn't be the first to claim to have invented a superpowered directed energy weapon. Several British and American inventors in the 1920s reported to have made a functioning death ray capable of bringing down planes and vaporizing birds. However, they were never able to show proof or a reliable demonstration. So, even to this day, true death rays are still believed to remain in the realm of science fiction. During World War II, the Nazis and the Japanese each attempted to develop their own death rays, and the most promising of these experimental weapons was fatefully destroyed during the bombing of Dresden. It's not clear how powerful these devices were though, or whether they even functioned as intended. Since then, it should be noted that many major militaries have successfully developed energy weapons, such as the US Navy, who deployed its laser weapon system in 2014. However, none come even close to the destruction and death Tesla claimed his device could inflict. In various interviews, he emphasized the sheer destructive potential of the Teleforce. Quote, "Many thousands of horsepower are transmitted by a stream thinner than a hair, so that nothing can resist. The nozzle would send concentrated beams of particles through the free air of such tremendous energy that they will bring down a fleet of 10,000 enemy airplanes at a distance of 200 miles from a defending nation's border, and will cause armies to drop dead in their tracks. It will be possible to destroy anything, men or machines, approaching within a radius of 200 miles. It will, so to speak, provide a wall of power, offering an insuperable obstacle against any effective aggression." End quote. It's safe to say that this weapon was tremendously dangerous, but still, Tesla held strong that such an invention would make war virtually impossible, as every country would have, as described in his own words, their own invisible Chinese wall, a reference to the Great Wall of China, the historic masterpiece of defensive architecture that protected China from invasion for 2,700 years. So, how did this super weapon of defense actually work? A 1915 New York Times headline read, "Tesla's new device like bolts of Thor." But this epic description comparing the death ray to Thor, the god of thunder in Norse mythology, was not quite accurate. As opposed to harnessing lightning, Tesla claimed that his weapon, charged by 100 billion watts, would blast a beam of metal ions at the speed of 270,000 miles per hour to eliminate its target up to 200 miles away. And such a blast would penetrate everything it touched, which does make sense, as this was one of the inherent properties of his power source, the cosmic energy. The general concepts of the death ray are understood. However, the finer details of how it's constructed remain unknown. In 1937, it was obvious that a massive international war was about to break out, and Tesla sent urgent requests to finance the construction of the death ray to multiple allied nations, including the United States, Canada, France, the United Kingdom, the Soviet Union, and Yugoslavia. However, as he was out negotiating with these various governments, an unknown person or people broke into the hotel room he had been living in and went through all of his documents. This was the first indication that the inventor's pursuit of the death ray had made him a player in a very dangerous game. However, Tesla was sure that the spies had taken nothing of value. Specifically, the blueprint for his death ray would have never been found, because it existed only in the safest place one could imagine, locked away in the photographic memory of Nikola Tesla himself. The question remained though, who was it that attempted to steal or possibly destroy Tesla's invention? This returns us to the most haunting mystery, the events surrounding his suspicious death in 1943. After Tesla's body was removed from his hotel room, it was carefully investigated by a medical examiner who announced an official cause of death: coronary thrombosis, which is a blood clot inside of a blood vessel of the heart, leading to a heart attack. Now, there is no doubt that for the last 10 or so years of his life, the inventor's physical health had plummeted. It's pretty clear from images of Tesla at the time just how deathly skinny and frail he was, and despite becoming prone to fainting, he refused to see a doctor, a troubling habit he maintained for almost all of his life. He was also incredibly poor, living from hotel to hotel, failing to pay the fees, and when he was eventually evicted, either for the unpaid bills or for living with pigeons, when they kicked him out, he'd simply move to another hotel. And it may be argued that he was in the gutter mentally as well, hoarding piles of birdseed and allowing his room to be constantly coated with bird droppings. So it's really no surprise to learn that Tesla died of a heart attack, given his age, 86, and his physical circumstances. It all makes perfect sense. However, it's important to consider that his final invention was of incredible political interest, and clearly, he was being targeted. Not only was his hotel room broken into previously, but after his death, there was the unsolved disappearance of his documents and black notebook, as reported by his nephew. It's no wonder why the FBI investigated for foul play. In recent years, CIA documents have been declassified, showing the existence of weapons that shoot an undetectable projectile laced with a poison designed to cause an immediate heart attack. So, potentially, Tesla could have been killed by such a weapon. However, it's impossible to prove or disprove, because the inventor died alone. There were no witnesses. There are 3 suspects, though, that are worth speculating on. To begin, we should revisit Tesla's nephew, Sava Kosanovic, who arrived the day after the inventor was found dead and was the first to report the missing documents. Kosanovic was not only the rightful heir of Tesla's estate, but he was also the Yugoslavian ambassador to the US. According to documents declassified in 2016, the FBI suspected that Kosanovic had secret ties to the Communist Party in his home country, Yugoslavia, and they feared that if he gained possession over Tesla's documents, he might, quote, make such information available to the enemy, end quote. At one point, they even considered arresting him to prevent the ambassador from receiving Tesla's estate. However, this plan fell through. Certainly, it is suspicious that Kosanovic arrived to the scene so quickly, a full day before the FBI did, and that he was the one who reported the missing documents and the black notebook that contained government secrets. And in the previous years, his political power in Yugoslavia had risen dramatically, which obviously provides a motive if we were to speculate that Kosanovic himself could have been the assassin. And being Tesla's nephew would have given him easy and private access to the elderly inventor. However, Kosanovic had his own suspicions of the FBI and the American government. To begin, he found it disturbing that, even though Tesla was an American citizen, all of his belongings in the New Yorker hotel were seized by the FBI. This was quick work, and well before Kosanovic could legally receive these items as Tesla's heir. He brought this to court, and finally in 1952, the court ruled that Kosanovic was the rightful recipient of Tesla's files and other materials, and he had them shipped to Belgrade, Serbia. However, the FBI had originally recorded 80 trunks of Tesla's possessions, and only 60 of these arrived. While the FBI claimed that they had jam-packed the contents of the original 80 trunks into just 60, it's entirely possible that the US government is still in possession of the remaining 20 trunks, and whatever was in them. So, could it be possible that Tesla was assassinated by his own government, the US? In the final years of his life, Nikola Tesla had become far more philosophical and eccentric, and wasn't making much practical scientific progress. Thus, his usefulness to the government was waning. The American government was, however, clearly worried about Tesla's work falling into the wrong hands, and this could have very well been their motive, with assassination and seizure of possessions as a preventative measure. But what real evidence is there that this could have been the case? Those secret weapons I mentioned, the ones that can induce a heart attack and remain undetected, those are American technologies. There's also evidence found in the 2016 declassified papers that the US Vice President at the time, Henry Wallace, held discussions with his advisors regarding, quote, the effects of Tesla, particularly those dealing with the wireless transmission of electrical energy and the death ray, end quote. There is also some indication that the president, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, tried to meet with the inventor just before his death. Finally, we remember that Dr. John G. Trump reported that nothing noteworthy was found in Tesla's final documents. His dismissive conclusion, however, was soon followed by the active development of directed energy weapons by the US military, the most notable being President Ronald Reagan's Star Wars program, which conceptualized hundreds of satellites orbiting Earth, each armed with particle beam weapons. It's entirely possible that the basis of these ideas and technological advances came from Tesla's missing documents. It's important to note that, even though some 250 pages of the classified material were declassified in 2016 and several more in 2018, many files still remain classified, and we genuinely have no idea what they contain. The American government could simply be suspicious as usual, though, and certainly they weren't the only world power with a strong motive to get a hold of those papers and Tesla's death ray technology. Several years before the inventor died, the FBI obtained evidence that German spies had gotten their hands on a large amount of his research and quickly uncovered a Nazi plot to weaponize some of his inventions. This was treated as a serious national threat, especially as World War II had just broken out. Clearly, some leaders of the Third Reich were targeting Tesla, and it's no surprise why. The Nazis focused heavily on technological advancement, and specifically that of weaponry. Though Tesla had only just described the finer details of his death ray in 1934, he had been teasing its development and sheer power for decades. By World War II, the fame of the death ray had grown so wide that many citizens of Tesla's homeland of Yugoslavia pleaded for him to come home and assemble the death rays in order to protect them from the invading Nazi forces. You can bet that the Third Reich was aware of this superweapon as well. But could the Nazis have really assassinated the elderly inventor? Well, beyond the evidence that the Nazis were interested in his research, there's really not much to go off of, with the exception of one very strange alleged deathbed confession from the infamous SS Lieutenant Colonel Otto Skorzeny. Now, admittedly, this is some serious conspiracy theory territory. This same deathbed confession asserts that Adolf Hitler was still alive and well in 1997, living in the US, and that the 41st President of the United States, George H.W. Bush, was, quote, George H. Sheriff Jr., the son of Nikola Tesla's illegal immigrant, German-born accountant, George H. Sheriff Sr., end quote. Actually, much of this confession revolves around Bush as a supposed Nazi infiltrator, and his life's work absorbing Nazi SS agents into the CIA. So, make of it what you will. However, the key detail in relation to Nikola Tesla's death was Skorzeny's claim that he and the German intelligence officer Reinhard Gehlen visited Tesla that day, posing as US government agents, and, quote, spoke in great detail to Tesla about his most advanced technologies, and then stole the blueprints of his best, most secret inventions, end quote. Finally, Skorzeny asserted that, at the end of this meeting, he and Gehlen murdered Tesla by strangling him to death. and their tracks were carefully covered by George H.W. Bush's shady political dealings. We all love a good conspiracy theory, but what's reality is that Nikola Tesla claimed that both his free energy generator and death ray peacemaking technology were nearly complete by the time he died. Actually, the death ray is believed to have been completed, with Tesla himself stating, quote, "It is not an experiment. I have built, demonstrated, and used it. Only a little time will pass before I can give it to the world." End quote. This then raises the mystery of just what happened to the inventor's functioning prototype. Simply put, it's never been found. But because he died before he could give these inventions to the world, or even demonstrate them publicly, we do have to wonder if they ever truly existed. All things considered, though, it's hard to argue that Tesla was a liar or a charlatan. Despite his utopian proclamations, his many inventions really did change the world, and he truly was just as genius as the stories make him out to sound. Unfortunately, the inventor refused to compromise the details of his ideas before they were finalized, in fear of his work being stolen, which unfortunately was all too common throughout his life. One of his most famous sayings today is, quote, "I don't care that they stole my idea. I care that they don't have any of their own." End quote. Though Nikola Tesla may have never achieved his dream of bringing free energy to the world and ending war completely and forever, his legacy is nothing short of profound. It's hard to say that Tesla saw the future when he was the one who laid much of its very foundation. Hundreds of his groundbreaking innovations are still present in our everyday lives, and some of his ideas are still being developed, perfected, or continue to be speculated upon. So for this eccentric thinker, who spent his days unraveling the mysteries of life and reality, of religion and science, we should pay close attention to the hints he left us. Maybe we may one day access the core of the universe, just as Tesla did. 3, 6, and 9. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this more scientific-minded investigation, I recommend you to watch my video on the Golem next, as the Golem is basically an ancient robot powered by occult magic, and a lot of you said it was one of my more underrated episodes, so definitely go check that one out. Shout out to my patrons. Thank you all for your generous support of my work, and if you want to support too, there's a link in the description. All proceeds go back to these videos. I'm Mr. Mythos. You guys are awesome. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.